Man, it's been a busy few weeks, eh? Lots of things happening. Hey, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your testimony. Just of those two healings. And one thing I just wanted to, as you were sharing, actually, you said that the surgeon was like dumbstruck. That he was like, "This can't be explained." Like he's got the MRI scans and. Apparently that he was even, looking at them that week, planning the surgery because it was such an intricate and, dangerous surgery to do, real sensitive surgery. And to open it up and to not find any tumours is just like he cannot explain it. He's like, that is a miracle. So it is a stunning, just testimony of God's goodness from prayer. Like, my goodness, like, that is awesome that there's such power in God's name, and that's why we pray, and that's why we press into God. We know, I love the way naturally supernatural. I thought it's a real aha moment for a lot of us, that it's like we've got standing orders, which means until we receive something else, this is how we approach life, and it's to pray for the sick. It is to share our testimonies. It's to share the gospel and to see His kingdom continue, and so exciting to hear that, Amanda. Thank you. And so this morning, if you don't know, we're tracking through the book of Acts, and we're following Paul and his journey, and so Murray, could you flick up that map? So just to show you, He's done his 3 missionary journeys. He went back to Jerusalem, got arrested. And so if you remember the story, so at the start of the red worm there, they're at Caesarea on the coast. And Paul was taken there at midnight with the garrison, the Roman garrison, who took him, hearing about the murder plot from Jerusalem, which is just below and to the right there under Judea. And so he's stationed right now at that port, if you will, and in jail, awaiting sentencing, awaiting to be brought in front of Felix, who was the governor of the whole area of Judea. So a powerful guy, and he's now in the court, in the judicial system, the Roman judicial system, awaiting to have his hearing. And that's where we find him in Romans 24. And so John Stott, he's a famous guy, an author, and he summarizes the situation like this, that Paul's facing the combined challenge of Jerusalem and Rome. Jerusalem with 2,000 years of history dating back to Abraham. Rome with 3 million square miles of territory of their empire spreading right around the coast of the Mediterranean. And so Jerusalem's power relies in its religious tradition, Rome in its conquest and organization. And so their combined power is huge. And he's alone in this prison cell, standing before the Roman authorities, with the religious authorities accusing him of sedition, which means to undermining the state. And so to be accused of being a dissenter of Rome and of Jerusalem, if you will, is like, he can be squashed so easily. It's like his life really is in the balance here. And so Paul was never going to last very long if these charges had any validity. But it seems like Paul had no fear, no concern. And from his perspective, actually, if you look at his writings through the New Testament, you'll notice that he acknowledges, actually, that Roman authority came from God himself. And Romans 13:1, going forward, he says that actually that Rome doesn't wield the sword for nothing. And he acknowledges that actually we've got to honour authority. And so from that perspective, he's saying that actually the Roman authorities have they don't need to fear followers of the way. They don't need to fear the the Nazarenes, the disciples of Jesus. And also, but in Romans 9, he acknowledges the favour and the history and the heritage of the Jewish people. And he talks about that they had a favoured relationship that with God, that theirs is the law and the prophets and the legacy. They have the Old Testament, and so he never challenged that, and actually he agreed with that. And so from his perspective, there's nothing in him that he was trying to undermine or threaten Jerusalem or Rome itself. And so Luke in this chapter actually sort of unpacks this court case that Paul is standing in front of. So let's read the drama of this. We're going to get through most of it, but the whole drama of this court appearance and what it takes and what Paul's facing. And I'll sort of pause it a few moments and we'll sort of unpack what's going on. But so verse 1 says, 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea with some of the elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, and they brought their charges against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Everywhere and in every way, most excellent Felix. We acknowledge that this with profound gratitude. But in order not to weary you any further, I would request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect and even tried to desecrate the temple, so we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we are bringing against him. The other Jews joined in the accusation, asserting that these things were true. Man, does that sound like a lawyer to you? The way that they structure when they bring a case before the Roman governors, it sounds like the structure of it is that they sweet talk them up and they're like, oh, you are highly favoured, thank you so much for listening to us as us mere mortals would bring our case before you type of thing. And they really butter them up. And that was the sort of structure of what was expected. So this fits in line with that, of what's going on here. But man, talk about laying it on thick. This Tertullus is like just putting it on with a trowel. He is really exaggerating what Felix was actually like. And Felix was known as a ruthless governor. Apparently, he would happily take bribes from people. If you wanted something to happen, you could bribe him, and he would side with you. And so, as a result, it said that crime was actually reported by Josephus that crime went up in Judea while this guy was in power because he was so corrupt. And when the crime went up, he just ruthlessly just went out and shut down whoever was creating the noise. And so this guy Felix was a shocker. Even only a couple of years prior to Ananias, a high priest. The high priest was sort of like a rolling appointment, and so the high priest was appointed every 2 or 3 years. And so anyway, a chap named Jonathan, the high priest, was appointed. Only two people before Ananias, and he promptly was murdered. And Felix, the governor, had him murdered personally. He got guys to walk around in the temple complex, hide daggers in their coat, and to kill him in broad daylight in the crowds. That's the kind of guy Felix was. And strangely enough, those people were never caught. And so Josephus, like the irony of it, right, is like, oh yeah, we have never had peace. Like you've taught us how to so much, Felix. This is how this this lawyer starts. And so you know what's coming. So Felix also, he had 3 wives, and his second wife was a Jew. And so he was also familiar with the way he was familiar with I guess of Judaism and 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 their religious practices. So this is whom Paul was standing in front of, alone and with these. He doesn't have a lawyer, but obviously to tell us, he brought three accusations against Paul. One that he was a troublemaker. So he said, you're a pest, was literally in the Greek. You're a disturber, and a disturber of the peace. And so anyone who tries or is accused of that, it's a serious accusation to make in a totalitarian state where Rome ruled with an iron fist, and they did not want disturbers of the peace amongst the public. And so that was the first accusation. And if you read back chapter 22, you realize actually that's pretty ironic, because actually it was the Jews who stirred up the crowds, the mob at the time, and got Paul into trouble. Paul was not the one who created the mob situation there. The second accusation is that he's a ringleader of the Nazarene sect. And Nazarene was simply a phrase that was used to describe followers of Jesus, like Jesus grew up in Nazareth. So the Nazarenes was sort of like just a phrase that they used to coin followers of Jesus who were disciples of followers of the way. And apparently even in Arab countries nowadays, they use that phrase, the Nazarenes, as a way of speaking about of Christians, of people who follow Jesus. And thirdly, he mentions that he tried to desecrate the temple. And so that was an accusation about bringing a Greek into the precinct of the temple where only Jews were allowed to be in, and which had capital punishment for that if you were to do that. So he was in when you look at it, these accusations were life-threatening for Paul. And so he responds in verse 10. When the governor motioned for him to speak, Paul replied, "I know that for a number of years you have been judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense." And so that's Paul's encouragement to the governor. Right? It's a little bit more subdued, right? He's like, "Well, you're in power, you know us, so I'm happy to make my defense before you. You can easily verify that no more than 12 days ago, I went up to Jerusalem to worship, and my accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city. And they cannot prove to you the charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. I believe everything that is in accordance with the law and that is written in the prophets. And I have the same hope in God that these men themselves have, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. And after an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and to present offerings. I was ceremonially clean when they found me in the temple courts doing this. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved in any disturbance. But there are some Jews from the province of Asia who ought to be here before you and bring charges if they have anything against me. Or these who are here should state what crime they have found in me when I stood before the Sanhedrin. Unless it was for one thing, I shouted as I stood in their presence. It is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today." Well, it's quite a rebuttal, hey? Paul's just on fire here. It's interesting, he doesn't mention the name of Jesus at all in this. But his ethos, he speaks about that I'm not against the Jewish religion. I'm a Jew myself, and I believe in all the same things. My hope is the same. And he points, just as in a justice system, he points to the fact that actually, hey, I know that one day that we are all going to stand before the God, and that both the righteous and unrighteous are going to stand before the throne room of God and give an account. And so his ethos, he says here, and he summed it up in verse 16, and he said, "So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man." Well, what an incredible way of stating how to live your faith out. That actually he strives to live to keep his conscience clear between God and man. Man, that is quite a stunning statement, isn't it? And it's quite a sobering statement, actually, that one day that we are also going to stand before God. We are also got to give an account for everything we've said and done. That nothing is going to be hidden. That, do you know, and I was thinking about it this morning, and it's like, man, we're going to meet Felix. We're going to be standing with these guys from history. We're all going to be, one day, standing before God and have to give an account for our lives. And that's an awesome thought, isn't it? Actually, it's a sobering thought. The word awesome actually means to elect like fear, terror, fear in the sense of like reverence and an awestruckness of like the authority and power of God. That the God who spoke this place into being, who breathed life into us, that we're going to be face to face with him one day. And Paul's like, that is why I live my life every day striving to live it in a way where I keep my conscience clear before God and before man. And so, you know, we are saved, right, by grace. And grace means unmerited favor. It means that it's got nothing to do with us. It's all to do with what God did, that he sent his son, that he paid the price for us, and that we accept what he did, that we are pardoned as a result. But what is really interesting is that it says in the Bible, and it's really clear, that we will be judged on our works. So in Revelation 20:12 and 13, it says this right at the end of the Bible. "And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. The sea gave up the dead and that were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them, and each person was judged according to what they had done." So how do you marry those two up? Like, hang on, I thought we were like by faith we were saved, and yet it's saying that God is saying here, the Bible's rule, that we are judged based on our actions. And so it's sort of, you know, we think, how do those things come together? Well, if you think about trees, actually, when if you look at a tree, I'm not a specialist, right? And if you looked at apple trees and pear trees, I couldn't tell you what's what. I couldn't tell you what's what until late summer when the fruit's out. Until you go, oh, there's the apple tree. Oh, that's a pear tree. And so, as Jesus spoke, in his using these metaphors, that would be known by our fruit. That actually we're not, that our works and the things that we've done, the fruit of our life, will actually prove our faith. It'll prove that our faith is real. It's like James said, it's like, you show me your faith. Well, faith without works is dead. So it's not that those works or those things, they cannot save us. Like God is, his standard is total purity. It's the 100%, which is why he's a holy God, which is why he sent Jesus to die on our behalf. But what is clear in the Bible is that he's saying also that actually, if your faith is real, there'll be change in your life. That will outwork in the way that you live out your life with your family, with your friends. And sometimes, we look at ourselves and we think, man, I don't know if I've changed. I don't know if, God, am I, is my faith real? And but often it takes someone else to speak, or we look at how was I like 10 years ago, and I think, shoot, man, I have changed. And it's not to our credit. It's like, man, God, you have done the work in me, through the Holy Spirit who transforms us from the inside out. But there is this no denying, right, that also that we are going to be judged by our works because they will prove that our faith is real. And so this comes back to Paul's ethos. So he's like, so I walk out my day every day so that my conscience would be clear between God and between man, and that I would ensure that the way that I live is above reproach, so that I would honor, honor God and honor what He has done in my life. Do you know the worst, accusation that can be leveled, I think, at you is, that you're a hypocrite, right? That you're a pretender, that you say one thing and do something else, that our actions and our words are different, right? And we hate that, hey? We don't like that in other people, and often we can't see it in ourselves. And it's interesting, the modern psychology and that they've broken it down into 4 ways we do it. And one is being inconsistent, that we require of things from others that we don't do ourselves. And you see it with people are outraged when someone, when they take their dog for a walk and it does a dump, and they don't pick it up and they just carry on, they think, oh, that's gross, why didn't they pick it up? But then when it's your turn and you're taking your dog for a walk and you've run out of bags and you're like, oh no, and you shuffle on past, it's okay for you because you know why, and yet we judge others, right, and we expect a high level from other people, but it's okay if every now and again we don't. And I remember, for me, I know driving across Southia Bridge, man, that gets me sometime, because it's a one-way. You know what it's like when someone's 3/4 of the way across the bridge and you're waiting there and you're hoping the person coming up's going to stop, but they don't, and they roar through behind. And then they kind of give you a quick wave. It's like, oh yeah, it's all good. And you think, oh, come on, But then when it's the role reversal and you're in a hurry and you think, oh no, it's okay, I'll just sneak in behind because I don't have to wait another 5 seconds. And so we have this inconsistency, in ourselves, and which people hate. The other one is we blame and we criticize others for something that we already do. And I remember distinctly saying to my kids once, someone, they were eating, I was like, oh man, you eat so loud. And then they turn around to me and are like, Dad, have you any idea, when you eat muesli, man, you sound like a concrete mixer in the morning, And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I'm loving my muesli, and so we, again, that's another way that we do it, and the third way is pretense, that we claim something, right, but even though personally we don't follow through. And I never forget, as Greta Thunberg, when she went in 2019, she was a climate change girl and, advocating that we should all not use planes and everything else. And so her sailed across the Atlantic, actually. Took about 10 days or something to sail across, so that she didn't have to fly to speak at, I think, a big gathering in the US. And everybody, especially social media, it was all rah, rah, rah. Only for it to find out that the crew of the boat had to fly back, and so the crew of 4, 3 of them fly back, and it's like, oh, come on, just take the plane, and actually you would have used less carbon had you have done that than trying to make this great statement. And so it's this virtue signaling, hey, look at me, I'm morally so awesome, and yet actually, oh, no way, I'm doing actually the same thing and even worse than what everyone else is doing. And so that's how we can be hypocritical with our pretenses. And so there's this old wisdom proverb which says that it's better to be a sinner than a hypocrite. And Paul was like that, eh? He never shied away from who he was. He never shied away from sharing his testimony that, man, that he was a murderer, that he hated the Christians, that he was a sinner, like the worst of sinners, he calls himself. But it's only by the grace of God that he is who he is. And it's only by the grace of God that he stands and shares his testimony. And sometimes it's so easy to lose our perspective on things, and that we would be totally lost and doomed if not for what God's done for us. And so here's Paul. He doesn't accuse Felix of being a corrupt leader. He honors him. But he also starts to speak about, hey, righteousness and justice, and the fact that, yes, you're an authority, Felix, but one day we're all going to have to stand under a greater authority and give an account of our lives. And so it's something that, Paul does here really well, is that he doesn't judge Felix for his compromises, I guess. He has no idea of how much maybe Felix wanted to do the right thing. We don't know how much pressure he was on, and often we don't know if we were in that other person's place, how we would act in that situation either. And so Paul refrains from judging him, but just shares his story and the focus on who Jesus is and the gospel message. And so as a church, man, we've got a lot of credibility in this place for the things that have gone on before, with the centre being operating for 25 plus years, with youth work, with the work we do in Carradine, with the work we do with kids and stuff, that's created this incredible platform in this place. That's when we strive to live our lives out in a way conscience is clear before God and man. It means that you have a voice. And I want to encourage you that as a church, you have a voice. And people need to hear your story. They need to hear the hope and the joy that you have. And we have that, as Paul here, his reputation protected him. His reputation created a platform for him to share his story in front of governor after governor. In fact, there's 5 of them in a row which he has this opportunity to keep speaking to. And so I encourage you that this morning to consider also, like Paul, to make out that ethos of actually to live with a clear conscience between God and man is an awesome way to walk out our faith, and with the knowledge of that awesome thought that one day each one of us, along with Felix and every other person in humanity, are going to stand before God and give an account, and by our fruit will be known, and that God is a good God. And that his promise is that when you put your faith in him, his promise is that he will put his Holy Spirit in you, and that you're not alone, and that you can do this journey. It's not a journey of works, but it's a journey of partnering with him. So as the team come up, I want to encourage you this morning, just to reiterate, if there are people here this morning, and it's like, man, I've got stuff going on that I'm trying to fix, trying to deal with myself, I'm trying to do it on my own. I believe it's just a real reminder is that actually no, he wants us to come with praise in our hearts and to offer those things to him, and to partner with him, to give him our burdens. We're just so thankful for hearing these testimonies too. And if that resonated with you, what Amanda shared this morning, I'm sure she would love. And I know she was inspired that Sunday night from other people's stories about just receiving healing, and just that she was worthy to receive it. And so if that's something in your heart stirred and you thought, man, I want prayer this morning too for something for me, then we would love to continue that cycle and pray for you as well. So bless you heaps. Have a great day. And do you want to stand? We'll just worship God as we finish.